There's a moment sharp, electric, unforgettable when a mask slips. When someone you once thought was charming, kind, or even caring suddenly realizes that you see them, truly see them. You're no longer buying the compliments, the fake concern, or the endless little performances they put on. You've caught the manipulation in action, and in that instant, everything changes. Think about it. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and realized, I know exactly what you're doing, and it's not going to work anymore? That's the moment when a bad person panics. Their tricks are no longer hidden in the shadows. They know you know, and that is when the real game begins. Because here's the truth. When a manipulator is exposed, they don't disappear quietly. They shift. Their sweetness turns strategic. Their charm becomes calculated. Their words are no longer casual, they're weapons, sharpened and precise. You've stepped into psychological warfare, and the rules are no longer the same. But let me stop here and ask you something. How do you respond? Do you explode with rage? Do you break down in fear? Do you start arguing, defending, and trying to prove what you know? Most people do, and that's exactly what the manipulator wants. They want your reaction. They want your confusion. They want to pull you back into the game. This is where the Stoics, the ancient masters of resilience, become our teachers. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced betrayal at the highest levels of power, didn't waste his energy arguing with liars. Epictetus, once a slave, understood that no one could control his mind unless he handed over that power. Seneca, a philosopher and statesman surrounded by political plots, taught that the true strength of the soul is shown not in how loudly you fight, but in how firmly you stand. These men lived in a world far harsher and more dangerous than ours, but their wisdom still applies today. They remind us that the goal is not to fight fire with fire, it's to stay intact in the middle of chaos, to refuse to be played, to protect your peace no matter how cunning or ruthless the opponent becomes. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 9 manipulative moves bad people use the moment they realize their mask has slipped. These aren't random guesses. They are patterns, tactics that repeat themselves in relationships, in workplaces, even in families. And if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, if you've ever sensed the chill of someone's fake kindness, you will recognize these games immediately. Here's why this matters. When you know the playbook, you no longer fall for it. Instead of getting caught in emotional traps, you can respond with clarity, with calm, and with strength. You'll understand what's really happening beneath the surface, and you'll know how to walk away with your dignity and your sanity intact. Because manipulators thrive on confusion. They want you second-guessing yourself. They want you chasing after explanations, proving your innocence, or justifying your instincts. But once you learn to see through the act and stop reacting, you rob them of their power. Silence becomes your shield. Integrity becomes your answer. And clarity, your ability to see things as they are, becomes the rebellion they can't control. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a moment where someone switched on you the second they realized you weren't fooled anymore? Did you notice how quickly the warmth turned cold? How the concern turned calculated? If so, then this message is for you, because you are not crazy. You are not overreacting. In the next part of this video, I'll show you the 9 exact strategies manipulators use when they're exposed, and more importantly, how to meet each one with the timeless power of Stoicism. From flipping the narrative, to pretending nothing happened, to even trying to isolate you from others, you'll see their tactics for what they are, and you'll discover how to stand strong without losing yourself. Remember this, the moment you stopped being fooled was the moment you reclaimed your power. And that power doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it stands still. Calm, solid, unshakable. So let's dive in. Let's start with the first move in the manipulator's playbook. AT. They flip the narrative. The moment a bad person realizes you've seen through their act, they don't admit it, they don't back down. And one of the first tricks they reach for is this. They rewrite the story so that you become the problem. Think about it. You catch them lying, manipulating, or twisting the truth. You call it out even gently, and suddenly you're the one who's overreacting. You're too sensitive. You're making things up. They switch roles so fast it makes your head spin. They're no longer the deceiver. Now they're the victim, and you're the aggressor. Have you experienced that? Maybe in a relationship where every time you raised a concern, you were told you were imagining things? Or at work, when pointing out someone's dishonesty made you look like the troublemaker. That's the tactic. Gaslight you, discredit you, and confuse you until you start defending what you know is real. Why does this work on good people? Because most of us don't like conflict. We don't want to be unfair. We don't want to jump to conclusions. Manipulators bank on that. They exploit your empathy, your hesitation, your desire to be the reasonable one. Now here's where Stoicism offers a different path. Marcus Aurelius didn't walk around Rome arguing with liars. He didn't waste his breath trying to prove every rumor wrong. Instead, he focused on something far more powerful, living in a way that made lies powerless. He wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I'll gladly change. But if not, I'll keep walking my path." That's clarity. That's strength. The Stoic answer to narrative flipping is not to fight for control of the story. It's to stand so firmly in truth that no story can shake you. You don't scramble to correct every distortion. You don't compete with lies. You just keep showing up with consistency, calm, and integrity. Now, don't get me wrong, it stings. Being misunderstood hurts. Being called dramatic or paranoid when you know you're seeing clearly, it's frustrating. But here's the Stoic perspective. Emotional pain isn't proof that you're wrong. It's proof that something matters. And when something matters, it deserves to be protected not with rage, but with focus. So, how do you do this in practice? Imagine someone flips the story on you. Instead of chasing them down to argue, you step back. Let them talk. Let them spin their version. Meanwhile, you live in a way that speaks louder than their words. Over time, people who truly know your character will see the truth for themselves, and those who don't, they were never going to believe you anyway. It's not passivity, it's strategy. Because manipulators feed on your reaction. They want you to shout, to fight, to lose your calm, because then they can point at you and say, "See? Look how crazy they are." But when you refuse to give them that reaction, when you stay calm, steady, unshaken, you starve their game of oxygen. Let me give you an image. Imagine a fire. Manipulators throw lies like sparks. Every time you react with anger, it's like throwing dry wood into that fire. It blazes higher, hotter, but if you stop feeding it, if you stay calm, keep your peace, the fire eventually burns itself out. That's the Stoic way. You're not ignoring the truth. You're guarding your energy. You're choosing not to let someone else's story dictate your reality. So the next time someone flips the narrative, remember this. You are not responsible for their story. You are only responsible for how you live yours. Let them call you sensitive. Let them call you dramatic. Time and truth are on your side. Because in the end, you don't need to win an argument to win your peace. And that's a victory no manipulator can steal. And when flipping the narrative fails, when their lies don't stick, when you don't react, that's when many manipulators move to their second tactic. They pretend nothing ever happened. A smile, a casual, "Hey, how are you?" As if the damage never existed. But that, my friends, is not peace. That's just another move in the game. And that's exactly what we'll break down next. So, let's move to the second move manipulators use when the mask comes off, and they pretend nothing ever happened. This one might be the most unsettling of all, because when someone hurts you, when they manipulate or betray you, you expect anger, denial, maybe even conflict. They slide back into your life with a soft smile, a casual text. Hey, how are you? As if the damage never existed. Have you ever experienced that? Maybe after someone broke your trust, they didn't apologize, they didn't acknowledge it, they just showed up, acting like everything was normal. Commenting on your social media, sending a random, hope you're good, or joking in a group chat like nothing happened. And for a moment you wonder, am I overreacting? Should I just move on? That's the trap. It's not awkwardness, it's not denial, it's calculated. It's a test. They want to see if you'll play along, if you'll laugh like before, engage like before, let your guard down like before. Because if you do, they win. Not because they've changed, but because you've wavered. Here's why this works. Good people long for resolution. You don't like carrying grudges. You want closure, peace, harmony. Manipulators know this. Buddy wanna ven, step, with thide, BS, captive. They exploit that empathy, that kindness, that desire to avoid conflict. They're not seeking peace, they're seeking access. Can show me my error. I will gladly change, but if not, I will continue on my path. Notice what he's saying. Clarity comes from truth and accountability, not from pretending. Emotional distance is not cruelty, it's wisdom. So how do you apply this? Let's say someone comes back into your life with sudden friendliness, but no accountability. You don't have to slam the door in their face. You don't have to scream, I know what you did. Instead, you stand firm at the door. You don't rush to let them back in. You watch, you observe. You let their actions speak, not their charm. Because discernment is not bitterness, it's not stubbornness, it's wisdom. It's the choice not to be fooled by the comfort of familiarity. Forgiveness, the Stoics remind us, isn't about pretending harm never happened. It's about releasing the weight of resentment without losing the clarity of memory. You can let go of the anger without letting go of your boundaries. You can wish someone well without inviting them back into the same place in your life. And if you feel guilty for not re-engaging quickly, remember this. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself, not about resetting the relationship. Seneca once said that true strength of mind is not to be swayed by the crowd, not to be pulled into appearances. Harmony built on silence isn't peace, it's performance. And you are not required to perform. So, when someone acts like nothing ever happened, here's the Stoic response. Stay courteous, but cautious. Don't mistake friendliness for change. Let time, consistency, and truth reveal who they are. Because manipulators will often try to blur reality. They count on you craving peace more than clarity. But peace built on pretense isn't real, it's fragile. And it always breaks again. I'll give you a story. A woman I know went through this exact situation. After months of gaslighting and disrespect, she finally cut ties. Weeks later, he messaged her with a lighthearted, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you're doing well." No apology, no ownership, just a fake reset button. For a moment, she thought, maybe I should reply. Maybe it's easier to just go along. But then she realized, his friendliness wasn't a bridge, it was bait. And when she didn't respond, when she stood her ground, the mask cracked again. He wasn't interested in peace, only control. That's why the Stoic path is so powerful. It teaches us that boundaries are not walls of bitterness, they are gates of wisdom. You don't owe access to someone who refuses accountability. You don't owe trust to someone who's already broken it. You owe yourself your peace. So, the next time someone tries to slide back into your life like nothing ever happened, don't mistake the quiet for reconciliation. Watch, wait, stand firm. Because silence, when it comes with clarity, and here's the twist, when this tactic fails, when you don't fall for the fake friendliness, that's when manipulators often move to something darker. They stop pretending and they start working behind the scenes. Whispers, rumors, quiet sabotage, and that's exactly what we'll uncover in the next part. Now let's talk about the third move manipulators often use once they realize the mask is gone. They undermine you behind closed doors. This one cuts deep because it's sneaky, silent, and often invisible until the damage is already done. Here's how it works. When someone toxic realizes you've seen behind their act, it shakes them. Their control relied on your confusion, your silence, your willingness to doubt yourself. But once you no longer play along, fear takes over. Fear of exposure, fear of losing influence, fear of becoming irrelevant, and that fear turns into sabotage. But here's the twist. They don't come at you directly. They don't argue to your face. That would give you power. Instead, they go behind your back where they feel safe. That's when the whispers start. The quiet distortions. The subtle misrepresentations. Suddenly, someone says to you, "Hey, they told me you've been acting different lately," or "They said they're just worried about you." At first, it sounds like concern, but underneath it's poison, designed to make others question your integrity while they keep their own hands clean. Have you ever noticed this? That strange shift where people around you begin to look at you differently, but you don't know why? It's because someone is scripting a new story about you, one where they're the reasonable one and you're the villain. And here's why this tactic is so dangerous. You often don't know it's happening until it's already spread. By the time you realize, some people may already believe the lies, and the natural impulse is to fight back, to defend yourself, to clear your name. But here's the trap. The moment you start chasing rumors, you're already playing their game. They set the rules, and you've stepped into the arena they built. So, what's the Stoic way through this? And here's where the Stoics again offer us a better path. Marcus Aurelius said, Seneca once wrote, "The true mark of a great mind is to rise above insults, not to ignore them out of weakness, but to refuse to be controlled by them." You can't outtalk someone who is dedicated to twisting your words, but you can outlive them. You can let your actions, your character, your consistency shine so brightly that no whisper can blot it out. Think of it like this. Rumors are like shadows. They shift and move, but they have no substance. Your character is the sunlight. Over time, the light reveals the truth, no matter how many shadows dance in the dark. That doesn't mean silence out of fear. It means strategic restraint. It means choosing your words with precision, responding when necessary, but never lowering yourself into a reputation war. Because here's a hard truth. Reputation is never fully in your control. The Stoics reminded us of this often. What is in your control? The way you live when no one's watching? Let me share a story. A man I know discovered that a coworker was quietly undermining him to their boss. Little comments, little doubts planted. "I'm worried he's distracted. He seems a bit off." None of it was outright slander, but enough to make the boss second guess. At first he wanted to confront, to argue, to clear his name, but instead he chose the Stoic route. He doubled down on his consistency, showed up early, delivered quality work, treated everyone with calm respect. Over time, the contrast between his actions and the whispers became undeniable. The boss eventually realized the truth, not because of arguments, but because the pattern spoke louder than the rumor. That's the strategy. Let your life contradict the lies. Build such a strong alignment between what you say and what you do that gossip cannot survive the comparison. And yes, you might lose some people along the way, those too quick to judge, too eager to believe the easy story they might fall away. But here's the gift. What you keep is far more valuable. Your self-respect, your peace, the ability to look in the mirror and know that you stayed true. So when someone tries to undermine you behind closed doors, you don't have to chase every rumor. You don't have to fight for every opinion. You only have to live in such clarity that the lies collapse under the weight of truth. Because truth doesn't sprint, it doesn't shout. And here's the key. When this tactic doesn't work, when sabotage fails and you don't come crawling back, many manipulators pivot again. They don't stop. Instead, they try something more subtle, more deceptive. They suddenly present a new version of themselves, softer, kinder, changed. But is it real growth or is it bait? That's what we'll uncover next. Now let's look at the fourth move manipulators often use once they know you've seen through them. Is they suddenly change to win you back. This one is tricky, maybe the trickiest of all, because when lies fail, when charm falls flat, when sabotage backfires, manipulators often reach for a more deceptive tool, the illusion of transformation. Have you ever noticed this? Someone who once mocked your boundaries suddenly praises your strength. Someone who dismissed your feelings suddenly seems full of empathy. The same person who ignored your pain now says, "I've been thinking a lot. I want to do better. I'm sorry." Words you never thought you'd hear delivered at just the right time. It feels like change. It feels like growth. And for a moment you wonder, maybe they've finally woken up. Maybe the version of them I was hoping for is here at last. That's the danger. Because manipulative people don't evolve by growing, they evolve by recalibrating. If guilt doesn't work, they try charm. If charm fails, they try remorse. If remorse doesn't land, they try self-awareness. It's not change, it's strategy. Let me share a story. A close friend of mine went through this exact trap. After months of being devalued and manipulated, she finally pulled away. And then everything changed. He came back apologetic, supportive, talking about therapy, even using her own words from past arguments word for word. For a while, it seemed sincere. She softened. She let him back in, slowly. But before long, the same old patterns crept back. Subtle criticisms, pushed boundaries. The change had been nothing more than bait, a performance just long enough to regain emotional access. That's what makes this tactic so dangerous. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, it's quiet. Because deep down, most of us want to believe people can change. We want to believe in redemption, but manipulators use that hope, like a fishing line dangling just enough sincerity to pull you back into the cycle. So, what's the Stoic way through this? Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That means we don't respond to emotional bait with emotional decisions. The Stoic doesn't rush to embrace every apology. The Stoic doesn't melt at the first sign of remorse. Instead, they watch. They track patterns, not promises. Because real change doesn't announce itself, it proves itself. Day after day, quietly, consistently, through humility and self-correction. And most importantly, real change never demands instant trust. So if someone suddenly appears transformed, here's the Stoic approach. Stay kind. Watch their actions over time, not their words in the moment. Don't confuse hope with evidence. Remember this, forgiveness isn't an invitation, it's a release. You can forgive someone in your heart without reopening the door. You can let go of bitterness without giving them a front row seat in your life again. Seneca taught that the wise person does not become bitter at betrayal, but neither do they willingly return to the same harm. Wisdom is not cynicism, it's discernment. It's refusing to confuse performance with transformation. And here's the perspective that frees you. Even if they really are changing, even if the growth is real, your boundaries still stand. Their transformation does not obligate you to rebuild what was broken. You can wish them well from a distance. You can let them grow without making their growth your gamble. Because manipulators know one thing very well. The moment you believe they've changed, your guard drops, and the cycle resets. That's why the Stoic path is so clear. Don't let hope blind you to patterns. Don't let temporary words outweigh consistent actions. So ask yourself, are you seeing growth or are you being baited? Has this person shown consistency or just a convenient act? Are you responding with reason or with the longing to believe in something that may never come? When you choose clarity over hope, you choose freedom. You choose to stay grounded, to stay awake, to stay unshakable. And here's the catch. When fake change doesn't work, manipulators often try something subtler. They don't storm the gates. They don't demand your trust. Instead, they start testing the walls of your boundaries. 1 inch at a time, a comment here, a casual text there. Little nudges designed to see if your resolve will crack. And that's exactly what we'll dive into next. When the act of fake change stops working, manipulators rarely give up. And they start pushing your boundaries, but very, very subtly. At first, it looks harmless. Maybe it's a short text, just thinking about you, or a vague comment on your social media post. Maybe it's a mutual friend saying, "Oh, they mentioned you the other day. They said they miss your energy." On the surface, it feels small, even innocent. But make no mistake, these are not random acts. They are probes. Think of it like tapping the glass to see if it cracks. A manipulator doesn't need to kick down your door. They just need to find out if it's still unlocked. And if you respond even politely, that's all the permission they need to push further. Have you ever been there? You finally set a clear boundary, you decide no more, and then, weeks later, comes that tiny message, that little reminder. And part of you thinks, well, it's rude to ignore, maybe I'll just reply quickly. Why does this tactic work? Because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels familiar. It feels easier to be polite than firm. And manipulators thrive on that tiny crack in your armor. They don't need to break the wall all at once. They just need to find one loose brick. Now, here's where Stoic wisdom is powerful. Epictetus taught that the only thing we truly control is our own response. We cannot control the tests others give us. We cannot stop people from knocking at the gate, but we can control the gate itself. In practice, that means this. Boundaries are not declared with words alone. They are lived through discipline. Saying no once is not enough. You have to live the no. You have to show it through consistency. And sometimes, the strongest boundary isn't a confrontation, it's silence. Let me give you a story. A woman named Jordan, strong, kind, empathetic, finally walked away from a manipulative relationship after months of gaslighting. She set a clear boundary. No more contact. For a while it held. But weeks later came the message. Hey, just checking in. Hope you're well. Short, friendly, vague. Then came the subtle mentions in group chats. The accidental reminders through friends. Jordan almost responded not because she forgot the harm, but because she didn't want to seem cold. And that's exactly what manipulators exploit. Not your weakness, but your strength, your kindness, your desire to be fair. This is why Stoicism matters. The Stoic doesn't confuse politeness with wisdom. The Stoic knows that silence is not cruelty when it's protecting peace. Boundaries are not punishments, they're protections. And by holding them consistently, quietly, you send a message louder than any confrontation could. I am no longer available for your games. So how do you apply this? Don't explain your boundaries endlessly. Explanations can be twisted into negotiations. Don't respond to every small probe. Sometimes no response is the clearest response. Remember Epictetus. You can't control their attempts, but you can always control your gate. And here's the truth. Over time, your silence, your steadiness, your consistency, it speaks volumes. It tells them their old tactics don't work anymore. It tells them you've grown. You've become unshakable. But be warned, when subtle pressure doesn't work, when you don't crack under charm, guilt, or silence, manipulators often shift to their next, more desperate move. If they can't get back into your life directly, they'll turn away from you and start working on others. They'll try to discredit you, to isolate you, to control the narrative in the crowd. And that's the sixth move we'll uncover next. When subtle pressure doesn't work, when you don't reply to the little messages, when you hold the boundary firm, manipulators don't just walk away. They often pivot to something darker. They try to isolate you or discredit you to others. This move is less about controlling you directly and more about controlling the environment around you. If they can't win back your trust, they'll try to win over the people around you. And if they can't pull you back into their web, they'll try to make sure you stand alone. Here's how it looks. They go behind the scenes, whispering into the ears of mutual friends, co-workers, even family. But notice they rarely attack outright. Instead, they frame it with a mask of concern. I'm worried about them. They've been acting strange lately. I just want peace, but they've become so difficult. I don't know what happened. I'm trying, but they've changed. Do you see the trick? They present themselves as the reasonable one, the calm one, the victim who only wants harmony. Meanwhile, you are recast as the unstable one, the troublemaker, the problem. And slowly, you begin to notice the shift. Invitations stop coming. Friends grow distant. Co-workers act cautious. Opportunities quietly disappear. It's erosion, not explosion. And that's what makes it so effective. It makes you question your own footing. Have you ever felt that? That strange sense of being cut off, not because of something you did, but because of a story you didn't even know was being told about you? That's not paranoia. That's manipulation in motion. Now, the instinct in this moment is to fight back, to defend yourself, to explain, to campaign for your reputation. But here's the Stoic truth. Reputation is never fully in your control. You cannot chase every rumor without becoming trapped in an endless race. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The one thing worth clinging to is to live truthfully and rightly, and be patient with those who do not." That's the strategy. You don't fight a smear campaign with a counter campaign. You fight it by living in such alignment that, over time, the lies can't hold. Because lies burn fast, but truth endures. Let me give you a story. A man in a workplace was quietly undermined by a colleague who spread whispers that he was unreliable, unstable, hard to work with. At first it shook him. People seemed distant. Projects slipped away. His first instinct was to chase everyone down, defend himself, clear his name. But then he realized that's exactly what the manipulator wanted. If he looked frantic, defensive, unstable, it would only confirm the rumor. So instead, he chose the Stoic path. He kept showing up, calm, professional, consistent. Over time, the contrast between who he really was and what was being said became undeniable. The lies withered, the truth stood, and in the end, the manipulator's own character exposed itself. This is the lesson. Clarity, not control, is your weapon. You don't need to manage everyone's opinion. You just need to manage your integrity. Because those who matter, those who truly know your character, will see through the performance in time. And those who don't, you don't need them in your corner anyway. But let's be honest, this is not easy. The silence can feel suffocating. The false stories can sting, especially when they come from someone who once claimed to care about you. But here's where the deeper freedom lies. Realizing you are no longer chained to what others think. You are only chained if you give them your reaction. Seneca reminds us, the wise person seeks not revenge, but alignment. You don't need to attack. You don't need to scream. You live so clearly, so consistently, that anything built on lies collapses under its own weight. So if you ever find yourself being isolated or discredited, remember, don't campaign for allies, you'll waste your peace. Don't chase every rumor, it will only drain your strength. Live in such truth that time itself becomes your defender. Because manipulators want you alone, and in the long arc of time, truth always outlasts performance. And when this final desperate move fails, when the lies no longer hold, when your peace remains unbroken, something remarkable happens. You discover a freedom that no manipulator can touch. A freedom rooted not in how the world sees you, but in how you see yourself. But manipulators rarely stop at 6 moves. There are other masks, other tactics. Some pretend to be moral, some weaponize the crowd, and some even resort to threats. These too are part of the playbook, and we'll uncover them next. When outright lies don't work, when sabotage and smear campaigns start to collapse, manipulators sometimes reach for a mask that looks almost untouchable, and they put on fake morality. This is when they stop trying to look charming or apologetic, and instead, they try to look holy. They posture as the bigger person, the forgiver, the one who is rising above it all. You've probably seen this. After being caught in manipulation, instead of admitting fault, they say things like, "I don't want to argue, I just want peace. I've already forgiven them. I'm taking the high road here." Sounds noble, doesn't it? But underneath, it's just another performance. By claiming moral superiority, they shift the spotlight. Now they're the enlightened one, and you're the bitter one. They're the calm adult. Why does this tactic sting? Because it preys on your deepest values. Good people want to be fair, want to be moral, want to do the right thing. And when someone weaponizes those values, it can make you question yourself. You start wondering, am I the one being small? Am I the one who can't let go? But here's the Stoic truth. Morality isn't something you announce. It's something you live. Marcus Aurelius didn't need to broadcast how noble he was. He just lived it day in, day out, without show. Fake morality is loud because it's empty. True morality is quiet because it's real. Seneca once wrote, "He who does good with modesty does it doubly." In other words, real goodness doesn't boast. Real peace doesn't need to advertise itself. If someone loudly claims the moral high ground while quietly avoiding accountability, it's not virtue, it's theater. Let me share a story. A woman once confronted her ex-partner for repeated dishonesty. Instead of apologizing, he told everyone around him, "I've forgiven her anger. I just hope one day she can forgive me too." Notice the framing. He was never the liar, never the manipulator. Instead, he became the merciful saint, forgiving the very person he had harmed. And sadly, some people believed it. For a while, she was painted as the bitter, unforgiving one. But in time, his morality wore thin. The pattern revealed itself: empty words, no accountability, no real growth. And her steady character, her quiet strength, proved far more compelling than his speeches. So how do you deal with this tactic? Here's the Stoic response. Don't chase their performance. Let them have the stage. Theater always collapses when the act gets old. Don't feel pressured to prove your morality. Virtue is not a debate, it's a discipline. Remember Epictetus, if someone speaks ill of you, live so that no one will believe them. Fake morality is a bluff. It's designed to make you defensive, to make you prove yourself, to make you react. But the Stoic way is to let your character, lived consistently, outlast their act. Because here's the truth. The louder someone proclaims their purity, the less of it they usually have. And those who truly know you, those who matter, will see through the performance over time. So when you hear the words, "I've forgiven them, I'm taking the high road," remember, the high road doesn't come with a billboard, and you don't need to prove your goodness to anyone who demands it. This is just another mask, another illusion, another move in the playbook. And when fake morality doesn't work, when you refuse to bite, they'll often move to something more public, more forceful. They'll try to rally numbers, to weaponize the crowd, to make you feel small against the pressure of many voices. That's the 8th move, and it's one of the most common manipulative tactics in families, workplaces, and social circles alike. Let's break it down next. When fake morality doesn't convince you, when you don't buy into their saint-like act, Manipulators often reach for a tactic that feels overwhelming, and they try to use the crowd against you. This is where things get loud. Instead of just one voice, they gather many. They try to build alliances, whisper into groups, stir up opinions, and suddenly, it feels like the weight of numbers is stacked against you. You see this in families. One toxic person feels exposed, so they start calling relatives, telling their side of the story first. By the time you show up, the room is already tilted against you. You see this in workplaces. A manipulative coworker whispers to others, framing you as difficult, so that when the meeting happens, the crowd subtly sides with them. And you see it online, where someone who feels exposed tries to rally followers or mutual friends to shame you into silence. It's no longer just them versus you. It's them plus the crowd versus you. Why is this effective? Because humans are wired to fear rejection. We want to belong. We want community. When a manipulator isolates you through group pressure, it doesn't just attack your reputation, it attacks your very sense of belonging. And for good people, the temptation is strong. Give in, smooth things over, apologize just to end the tension. But here's the Stoic truth. Truth does not depend on numbers. Epictetus said, "If you want to be free, care more about your own mind than the opinion of the crowd." The crowd is fickle. Today they cheer, tomorrow they boo. But your freedom, your clarity, your character, those remain steady if you choose them. Let me share a story. A young man refused to go along with the lies of a toxic leader in his workplace. At first, it was just tension between the two of them. But soon, the leader began recruiting others, subtle digs, private messages, small rumors, until the young man felt the whole team was against him. For weeks, he questioned himself. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I should just back down. But then he remembered something he had read from Marcus Aurelius. What is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. So he stood firm. He kept working with integrity. He stayed calm in meetings. He refused to lash out or defend himself frantically. And slowly, people began to notice the cracks in the manipulator's story. The very crowd that was used as a weapon eventually saw the truth. Because performance can sway people for a while, but consistency wins them back in the end. This is the lesson. Never confuse the loudness of many voices with the clarity of truth. 10 people repeating a lie doesn't make it true. One person living in alignment with reality can outlast a chorus of deception. So how do you respond when manipulators weaponize the crowd? Don't panic. Remember that group pressure is a tool. It's designed to make you break quickly. Slow down. Breathe. Don't campaign. Chasing approval, defending yourself to everyone, drains your strength. Stand steady. Let your life, your work, your consistency become the counterweight that no rumor can overturn. Because here's the truth. The crowd doesn't actually know you. They only know the story they were told. And over time, your actions will tell the real story louder and clearer than any rumor. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "If you live according to reason, you will not be carried away by the applause or the blame of others." That's Stoic freedom. To be unmoved by the crowd, to live so firmly in truth that popularity no longer dictates your peace. So when manipulators try to overwhelm you with numbers, remember, you don't need a majority vote to stand in integrity. You just need courage to stand alone. And often, standing alone is what eventually draws the right people back to your side, the ones who value truth over gossip, substance over noise. And here's the shift. When even the crowd fails to break you, when your calm and clarity outlast the chorus, manipulators often move to their final weapon. No more charm. No more whispers. They resort to threats, to ultimatums, to one last desperate attempt at control. That's the 9th move, and it's where the mask finally cracks wide open. Let's uncover it next. When charm fails, when fake morality collapses, When the crowd no longer works, manipulators often turn to their last, most desperate weapon. They threaten you or deliver a final ultimatum. This is where the mask shatters completely. The smile is gone, the whispers dry up. What's left is raw desperation because control is slipping through their fingers, and desperation often speaks in ultimatums. If you walk away, don't you dare come back. If you tell anyone, I'll ruin your reputation. If you don't do this, you'll regret it. Sometimes the threat is emotional, guilt-tripping, shaming, or leveraging love. Sometimes it's social, spreading secrets, sabotaging relationships. And sometimes it's practical. Financial threats, legal threats, even physical intimidation. Whatever form it takes, the goal is the same: fear. If they can't manipulate you with charm, they'll try to manipulate you with intimidation. Have you ever faced this? That chilling moment when someone you once trusted suddenly reveals just how far they're willing to go to keep control? It's shocking, but it's also revealing. Because when someone resorts to threats, they're showing you exactly who they are. Here's why this tactic is powerful. Fear makes us reactive. When you feel threatened, your survival instincts kick in. You want to protect yourself, defend, respond. Manipulators know this. They use fear as their last leash, hoping you'll snap back into submission. But here's where Stoicism gives us an unshakable shield. Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." The threat often feels larger than life, but in truth, it's only as powerful as your reaction. Fear is their final currency. If you refuse to spend yours, the manipulation collapses. Let me share a story. A man left a toxic business partnership after discovering layers of deceit. His former partner tried everything: guilt, charm, even smear campaigns. When none of it worked, the threats began. "If you walk away, I'll take everything you've built. You'll regret this." At first, it shook him. He couldn't sleep, replaying the words in his head. But then he remembered something from Epictetus. No man is free who is not master of himself. He realized his freedom didn't depend on threats, it depended on his choices. So he acted wisely, sought legal counsel, stayed calm, documented everything. In time, the threats lost their power because his response was calm, strategic, and fearless. That's the Stoic lesson. You don't ignore threats blindly, you prepare. You act with reason, not panic. You protect yourself legally, emotionally, physically, if needed. But you do not let fear dictate your choices. Because the moment you let intimidation control you, the manipulator wins. So how do you handle this? Stay calm. Threats are designed to provoke fear and rash decisions. Don't give them that victory. Seek support. In cases of serious threats, financial, legal, physical, bring in authority, law, or trusted allies. Stoicism isn't passivity, it's preparation. Hold your ground. Remember, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And here's the deeper truth. Threats mark the end of the game. When someone stoops to intimidation, they've exhausted every mask, every trick, every pretense. What's left is desperation, not power. Power used to be odds, and that desperation always burns itself out. So if you ever face this moment, remember, their ultimatum is not the end of your story, it's the end of theirs. You don't need to scream, fight, or prove anything. You need only to stand firm, act wisely, and protect your peace. Because the Stoic doesn't seek revenge, doesn't cower in fear, doesn't bend to intimidation. The Stoic rises above calm, steady, unshakable. And that's how the story ends. Not with their threats ringing in your ears, but with your freedom echoing in your soul. We've walked through the 9 moves manipulators use the moment their mask slips. Let's recap them quickly. Flip the narrative. Turn you into the villain. Pretend nothing happened. Slide back into your life as if the damage never existed. Undermine you behind closed doors. Whisper doubts. Twist your image. Fake change to win you back. Perform transformation, but only as bait. Subtly push your boundaries. Test the walls 1 inch at a time. Isolate or discredit you to others. Weaponize rumors and erosion. Put on fake morality. Act like the bigger person while avoiding accountability. Use the crowd as pressure. Rally numbers to make you feel small. Threats and final ultimatums. Try to intimidate you when everything else fails. 9 moves, 9 masks, 9 ways of scrambling for control once their power over you is gone. And here's the truth. Every one of these tactics is designed to provoke the same thing: do your reaction. They want you confused. They want you defensive. They want you so busy proving yourself that you forget your strength. But the Stoic path is different. The Stoic path says, you don't need to chase lies. You don't. You need to fight every rumor. You don't need to bow to intimidation. What you need is clarity, consistency, and character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's it. Your duty is not to fix everyone's perception. Your duty is to live in truth. Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. The manipulator may rage, whisper, or threaten, but they cannot master your mind unless you hand them the keys. And Seneca said it best, the best way to avenge yourself is to not resemble the wrongdoer. That's the victory. So let me ask you, which mask have you seen before? Was it the false apology? The crowd turned against you? The ultimatum shouted in desperation? Think back, because once you recognize the pattern, you can never unsee it. And that awareness is freedom. But here's something even more powerful. When you stop reacting to manipulation, when you stop being baited into emotional games, something incredible happens. You reclaim your peace. You take back your energy. You stand in a place of calm that no tactic can touch. And manipulators, no matter how skilled, lose their grip. That's what Stoicism has always been about. Not avoiding conflict, but mastering yourself in the middle of it. Not controlling the world, but controlling your response to it. Not needing to win the game, because you've already walked off the board. So if you've ever been lied to, gaslighted, smeared, or threatened, hear me when I say this. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not alone. You are simply awake. And when you see the game clearly, you don't have to play it. Your silence is not weakness, it is strategy. Your calm is not passivity, it is power. Your integrity is not naive, it is the shield that outlasts every mask. And here's the beautiful part. When all the noise fades, when the manipulator burns out, when the stories collapse under the weight of truth, what's left is you, stronger, clearer, free. So rise above the games. Don't match their chaos. Don't chase their approval. Don't fear their threats. Live with such clarity and consistency that their tactics lose oxygen. Let your discipline be your revenge. Let your truth be your final answer. Because in a world full of masks and manipulation, there is no greater victory than this: to remain unshakable. Stay sharp, stay strong, stay stoic, and I'll see you in the next On.